Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul. Hopefully you're having an amazing day. I have to admit, I am getting a lot more hyped and excited for the RX 9000 series of graphics cards. In this video, I want to talk to you guys about some very interesting rumours that perhaps will give you some insight into why that is. Now, it is very early days at this point, and they are essentially rumours, so it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this plays out. But in a video yesterday, I covered a rumour, well, essentially a leaked benchmark of Call of Duty that was running on an RDNA 4 class card. Now, the test was conducted with no upsampling, no frame generation or any of that jazz, and basically it was roughly on par with an RTX 4080 Super. Now, it's worth noting that the card itself was a bit of a mystery. We didn't know, for example, whether it was a 9070 or a 9070 XT. In the IGN article, it was claiming it was a 9070, but again, that could just be miscommunication from a PR person who was speaking at the booth. Trust me, sometimes miscommunication happens. They think it's one model when it's another model, and so on and so on. You can't really blame people. They're standing there all day, stuff gets miscommunicated, or you can ask someone, they're like, yeah, that's totally that specific card, and then, you know, one of their co-workers comes up, wait, did you tell this person that it was this? Yeah, oops. That stuff happens, trust me. So, yeah, either way, it was actually quite impressive, but now there are a bunch of new benchmarks and other information that actually add some credibility to what we'd heard. Now, this is a bit of a story, but I will try to keep us on track as much as possible. And we'll start out with a rumor from Chip Hell. And basically, videocards.com have done a really nice job of compiling a couple of benchmarks. One is from Speedway and the second is from Time Spy Extreme. I think the results pretty much speak for themselves, but in Speedway, the 9070 XT, assuming is this card, and we'll try to provide some context to that in just a second, is on par basically with an XTX and is also a little bit slower than a 4070 Ti Super. However, in Time Spy Extreme, notice that it is actually slightly beating an RTX 4080 Super. Now again, I want to be very clear, there are some driver things that we're going to be talking about and also some price information, but one reason we think that this is probably an XTX is because of a GPU-Z screenshot, and you can see it on screen yourself. The ROPS and TMU 64/256, shaders 4096 unified, assuming those are being detected, and well, GPU-Z is pretty easy to trick, to be honest with you. And there's also information regarding fill rate, memory type, blah blah blah. Interestingly, there's also a boost number here, which is 3060. Additionally, in another image, we can see a bunch of other information for the GPU, for example, memory, temperature, fan speed, blah, 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 blah. But there is also, can you see it? Can you see it? Board power draw, or BPD. We can see it's 329 watts, or 330 just for benefit here. So it does seem to be some type of model. But there is also more context to this. There is a very interesting tweet from a user 0x22h, of course this is on Twitter. I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but basically Apellion states, well, basically all of this of course is in Chinese, but it seems according to the person they were speaking to here, there were driver issues, so this is, quote, not even normal performance. So what this potentially means is that the driver, and again, we are making some logical leaps here, because one, we have to assume that these results were originally true, and the person did have access to this. Secondly, that this person who's talking about the driver is actually, again, accurate. For all we know, we don't know the driver revisions ourselves, and I'm not there testing it. But it seems like perhaps the driver is nerfing the performance of the GPU. Now, whether this is because of bugs, and remember, the IGN article does specifically mention things like graphics corruption, although whether the driver that was being tested, you know, at CES, which IGN had access to, and this driver are one and the same, whether they're separate drivers, I can't tell you guys. Now, it's very interesting because if these I'm sorry, I just managed to knock the camera. Well done me, professional YouTuber. But yeah, if these rumors are true, and again, I don't know, it would actually point to these cards being really good. Now, how good? It's of course going to depend, because at the end of the day, even if the results are 100% accurate, it doesn't necessarily mean that the engine is going to scale sorry, different game engines are going to scale. Like, how well is it going to do in, let's say, id Tech? How well is it going to do in a Unity engine game? What about Unreal? And so on and so on. And that's to say nothing of things like, what about ray tracing versus raster? What about different resolutions? I.e., does the Infinity Cache just kind of start choking if it go over 4K with ray tracing, but at 1440p the results are totally different? What about driver overhead? You get the idea. Like, there are so many different questions. I will be extremely interested to see how AMD end up positioning these cards, because there's also pricing rumors. Now, before we get into the pricing rumors, I can already hear you go, no, not more pricing rumors. And yeah, I kind of hear you on this, to be honest, guys. I personally have a lot of skepticism when it comes to any pricing information, because at this point, allegedly anyway, the cards are going to be announced on the 22nd. So we're about 2 weeks-ish away, roughly speaking. So anything can happen, even if these prices are, considered. But there are also rumors that certain cards are going out to some reviewers. Again, is that legitimate? I honestly don't know. But whether the reviewers have even been briefed on the prices, from what I've heard, prices were not even disclosed to AIBs at least a couple of days ago. So has something changed since then? Who knows? Anyway, the prices, if they are true, are absolutely crazy good. I'll give credit to HXL, also known as 9550 Pro on Twitter. And again, this is from Chip Hell, as everything seems to be, it seems. An AMD reference card, I'm going to round up the prices, $480 US, and the AIB is $550 US. So I'll repeat that, $480 for the reference, AIB is going to be $550. So the $550 would most likely be the 330 watt cards, and then obviously the cheaper price would be the lower power variants. Now, if this is true, which again is a massive asterisk, I would say that those cards are very well priced. Now, there is the caveat, of course, that if we compare it against the previous generation, which is, of course, the XT and the XTX, those cards, both of them have a decent chunk more memory. So there is that argument. You can say, well, we've got all this extra RAM on there. But even so, I think 16 gigs, and this is my personal opinion, if you feel differently, do let me know in the comments below, but I think for this performance class, 16 gigabytes is absolutely fine. I personally think it's absolutely fine. When you start getting to, like, if this was like a 4090 class card, or even faster, then I'm a bit like, I don't know, maybe. Like, that's one of the, that's my main criticism, for example, with the 580. I don't know if 16 gigs is enough for it. I would love for them to have outfitted that thing with 20, but even then, I'm a little on the fence, but I still think it should have had more RAM. With this, I think 16 gigabytes is okay, again, providing the price is great. And if AMD can nail that at this price, which I frankly am a little skeptical of, and by a little, I mean like, if I had I want you guys to imagine a ship that's the size of the Titanic, then I want you to imagine that that ship is like 500 times the size of the Titanic. That's the amount of salt I have with these prices at this point. I would love for them to be true, but they're just so competitive. If AMD were to do this, and I would be very curious to see what their margins are if they could release this part, boy, it would be extremely disruptive to NVIDIA. But I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Hopefully, we get some more information pretty soon. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this. Like, I'm so a lot of the performance information at this point. There is so many different leaks of RDNA 4's performance, and I will say, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in at least a couple of videos. One of my sources was telling me that AMD's drivers were purposefully nerfing the performance of the card for AIB testing. And the reason they were doing that is basically so that no one really knew just how good the GPUs were. Again, when it comes to things like that, you can easily put that down to copium, to be honest. Hopium and copium. But maybe it's true. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll wait and see. It's going to be absolutely fascinating, though, because if these cards really are like $480, ooh, that's going to be a spicy meatball. With that said, guys, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.